Oh, have I told y'all about the whole Thor situation? Long story short, okay, I'm gonna tell the whole story in case y'all missed it. Here's my little boy. His name is Thor. 2 days before my birthday, I noticed that he wasn't pooping, which is very weird for Thor because Thor's 10, so he's like an elder cat. But I'm also like, I'm home all the time. The only time I'm not home is when I go to the gym. And so Thor is around me all the time. Thor, I know all of his weird mannerisms, all right? When I went to clean his litter, I noticed that there was no poop. And he was kind of acting like lethargic, but not really. And so I was like, I'll watch him for one more day. And if he hasn't pooped overnight, then I'll call the vet. The next morning, I wake up, no poop. He also had been licking his butt a lot. And I was like, that's weird. I Googled like cat vet near me or whatever. And I was kind of in a little bit of a panic, but I woke up like really early to call them, and they're like, oh yeah, we have an opening, can you get here in like 15 minutes? And I was like, yep. Last time I took Thor to the vet a year ago to get his like vaccines and stuff, and then to give him just like a checkup, and he was perfectly fine back then. Basically, his old vet said that he was very spicy, or he was very, very something. And so when I go to this, new vet, and he's in the crate and whatever, they're like, okay, go in this room. So I went in the room with him, and I'm like, okay, this is good because he's gonna see me here, and then everything's gonna be fine, right? And they come in and they're like talking, and Thor does not like being in here. He can't, got him out of his crate so that way we could like weigh him and stuff, put him on the weigh scale thing. Thor like climbed up in my arms and was just holding on to me. And I was like, I've never seen a cat do this, because normally cats, they'll like run, they'll jump off the table, they'll try to hide in the room, they'll go in the sink, they'll do anything else. Vet came in, I explained he's been peeing, he eats fine, he just hasn't pooped. Anyway, so she was like, okay, I'm gonna like feel his like stomach or whatever, and I was like, okay. She like tries to lift his tail, and he growls and hisses. He did not like it. She's like, oh, okay, there's a spice. Okay, well, yeah, he definitely seems like to have discomfort. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Thor was never be constipated. He's a massive pooper. Like, side note, like Nate was here during all this, and what's funny is on the way to the vet, I was like, what if it's his anal glands? Like, because I heard that, animals have to have their anal glands drained or something. I thought it was cats too. Apparently it's usually just dogs. If it's for cats, it's very rare. But I didn't say anything to the vet because I was like, oh, the vet's gonna know. Obviously, I'm just a stupid kid that has the internet access. Anyway, so they're like, okay, we're gonna give him some x-rays, we're gonna give him a light sedative so that way we can, start the enema or whatever. And I was like, okay, they're like, you can come pick him up in like 2 hours. That trip was like $900. I'm home, anxious, waiting. They call like an hour after, and they're like, hey, so we gave him, an x-ray, and we tried to do an enema, but he's so blocked, like he's too constipated. It's not gonna work. So we're gonna give you laxatives and a sedative, and you're gonna have to take him to an urgent care tomorrow because it's the weekend. But if the enema doesn't work, then he's gonna have to stay overnight at an animal hospital so they can give him drip fluids and keep him hydrated. I was like, none of this makes sense because Thor was fine. He's always been fine. And so I called my mom about it, and my mom is like, well, if he's acting fine, just keep giving him the laxatives. It's like, you don't want to take him to a vet an urgent care on the weekend because they triple the price for no reason. We talked to like a bunch of other people, and they're like, yeah, just give him the laxatives, just try to loosen the poop and see how it goes. And the thing is, he was still eating. He was, he hadn't been drinking, but apparently like if you give cats only wet food, that's enough liquid like hydration for them. Brought him home. He was super loopy, super out of it. He managed to like poop a little bit, but he'd like run out of his litter box. And then it was my birthday, and so like all my friends that came over, they're like, oh, Thor, like petting him. They're like, it's okay, buddy, we just need you to poop, man. So skip forward to Monday. I wake up at the ass crack of dawn, right when the vet opens, and I call them. I brought my cat in, blah, 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 blah. He still hasn't really pooped. Can I bring him in? And they're like, oh yeah, can you come in at like this hour? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Load Thor back up in his crate, go back to the vet, and this time there's a different vet doctor there. I tell her everything, like he's eating, he's peeing, which is good. He's still not pooping. He did a little bit, but not a lot. I've been giving the laxatives. And she was like, okay. And so she's like, yeah. So she pulled up his x-rays, and she was like, okay, so here you can see he's very constipated. She was looking at his x-rays, and I could tell by her face that there was something in his x-ray that I didn't understand, but she knew. And so I was like waiting for her to tell me. She goes, okay, so it's really weird. So sometimes horses and cats get these like little floating things, and they're just there. They don't do anything. They're just there. I was like, Okay. You can see here, like, this is all the poop backed up in him, which is weird because, like, it looks like he should be able to pass that really easily. That's the thing, is usually he takes like human-sized poops, like he takes big poops, and he just hasn't been. And then she's like, another thing too, like, they didn't mention it when they sent in the x-rays. They didn't bring it up. They didn't say anything. They didn't, you know, mark it down or anything. So she pointed to his like back hip, and she's like, you see this little bitty, this teeny little white spot? And I was like, yeah. She goes, okay, so that is arthritis. And I was like, okay. And she's like, okay, so he's probably doesn't even notice it by now, and I don't know if that's causing him the discomfort, but he may start having arthritis soon. And I was like, okay. And since he is, you know, 10, he's a little older, he may start having kidney problems too. But so far, you know, we're not there yet. And I was like, okay, good. It's just weird, Thor having arthritis. Have y'all seen him? He's a psychopath. And so we turned him around, and she's like, okay, so I want you to put his face in your chest and then hold on to his front paws for me. And I was like, okay. So I bent down and put his head in my titties, and like I held onto his paws, and he was just vibing. She's like feeling around, and he wasn't hissing or growling this time. And so I was like, that's a good sign. And she goes, okay, yeah, I can still feel he's a little blocked. And she was, you know, really thinking. And then she's like, I wonder, I'm gonna lift his tail. And I was like, okay, he doesn't like when they do that last time. And she's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do it real quick. And so she lifts his tail, and he starts growling, and I'm just like, I'm holding on to him, right? And she goes, and so she moves like a part of his butt to the side, and he does not. He's like trying to move, and he's trying to like hiss and growl. And she goes, oh, yep, that's what's causing it. And I kind of look at her, and she goes, do you want to see? And I was like, sure. She goes, okay, so animals have these things called anal glands. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Because remember, like 4 days before this, I was telling Nate, oh, maybe it's his anal glands need to be drained. His anal gland ruptured. She's like, do you want to see? And I was like, yeah. So she turns Thor around, and then so his head is now facing her, and his booty is facing me. I see his butthole. She has his tail lifted, and she moves, because he had like two like fluffy like back butt cheeks. Like, here's the butthole, right? He has two little fluffy cheeks, and then here's the tail. She pulled back like his fluff. This is the butthole, right? This was the hole next to the butthole. It's a gaping hole with blood all around this side, and the big white like thing protruding out of it. And my gut, everything in me, like imagine all of my organs just went ado. And she was like, when anal glands rupture, sometimes they can rupture on the inside, but his ruptured on the outside. She's like, I don't know why the first vet didn't catch this. She said that, oh, maybe he was too spicy but that's bullshit. They should have caught it, you know? It's stupid. Anyway, what they ended up doing was they sedated him, they cleaned it out. Then they're like, okay, so we're gonna give him a shot of antibiotics for 2 weeks. It's gonna last 2 weeks, and he has to wear a cone for 2 weeks. And then the hole, you have to put a warm compress, like for 5 minutes, 3 times a day, and put Neosporin on it. I'm like, Thor is not gonna let me do that. And then they gave him back to me, and he had a cone on, and I was like, Thor's gonna remove this cone. He's gonna hate the cone. It's gonna suck. And he did remove the cone twice. The first 2 days, he would like thrash around, and he would like bump into, I mean, to be fair, he kind of bumped into everything the whole time. But then he got used to it. I did manage to do the warm compress a couple of times. He would fight me on it a little bit, but then eventually he's like, oh, this is warm. He'd like sit, so I'd hold like the wet, it wasn't wet, it was damp. And I'd put it up against his butt, and he would fight me, but then he would just kind of sit. As of now, I took the cone off, I think 4 days ago, because I don't know if he ate too fast or the food he was eating was spoiled, but he threw up. It was getting caught in the cone. And so I like ran, I was in bed, and I hear the hork, 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 and I was like, shit. So I like jumped it, because he didn't throw up the whole time. The hole was like, when he was throwing up, it was like the size of like a airsoft pellet. So it had gone from like this to like teeny tiny. Anytime he would like kind of go to lick his butt, I would like get onto him, and he'd look at me and be like, fine, and he would stop. So, but his personality is back 110%, I swear to God. Once the hole started healing, it was poop galore. Like, it was like y'all after Taco Bell, you know? It was just like, it's a flow of poop. Like, I'd be sitting here and I'd be like, oh God, I can smell it. And I would go check the litter and there would just be rings of poop inside the litter box. It was disgusting, but I was so glad that he was pooping. Now though, now he's perfectly fine. It was very stressful, like in the beginning, because they were saying stuff like, oh, he's really constipated. He's gonna need an enema. If that doesn't work, he has to stay overnight at the hospital and that's gonna cost thousands of dollars. And I was like, for constipation that he shouldn't even have? Yeah, so the first bill was like $900 and the second bill was like $500, but he's really good now. Hold on, I took a video of him earlier. What? Yeah, I don't know what you want. What do you want? I talk to him a lot.